The finale of Demon Slayer Season 4 opens with an intense scene as Muzan makes a dramatic entrance into the Yubayashiki mansion. As he steps into the stronghold, Shinazugawa and his Kasugai Crow swiftly alert the Demon Slayers and Hashiras of the impending danger. Inside, the ailing Yubayashiki greets Muzan with a calm demeanor, revealing a shared lineage. Despite this connection, Yubayashiki points out that their bloodline has significantly thinned over the centuries since Muzan's birth 1,000 years ago. Yubayashiki then captivates Muzan's attention by delving into the cursed history of his clan. He recounts how his family has been plagued by a curse ever since they produced a monster like Muzan. Seeking a solution, the clan consulted a priest who advised them to devote their lives and bloodline to the eradication of demons. To weaken the curse, the Yubayashiki clan married the daughters of priests. But despite these efforts, no child in the clan has ever lived past the age of 30. As Yubayashiki narrates this tragic history, Muzan watches Hinaki and Nishika playing nearby, their haunting melody adding to the eerie atmosphere. Yubayashiki then makes a profound claim, asserting that he knows Muzan's deepest desire, eternity. He explains that true eternity lies in the human will, which persists forever. He emphasizes that even if he, Yubayashiki, were to die, the Demon Slayer Corps would continue their mission. Conversely, if Muzan were to die, all demons would cease to exist. Muzan, irritated by Yubayashiki's words, prepares to kill him. Simultaneously, all the Hashiras, along with Tanjiro, rush towards the Yubayashiki mansion, determined to confront the demon. In a poignant flashback, it is revealed that the Yubayashiki family, despite being in constant danger, never used the Hashiras for their own protection. Himejima explains to the other Hashiras that Yubayashiki always insisted that the Hashiras are a valuable resource that should not be used for his own safety. This unwavering commitment to their cause highlights the selflessness and dedication of the Yubayashiki family. As the Hashiras frantically make their way to the mansion, it is suddenly engulfed in flames, leading to a massive explosion that kills the Yubayashiki family. Muzan narrowly escapes the inferno, realizing too late that he has fallen into Yubayashiki's trap. Anticipating the arrival of the Hashiras, Muzan is unexpectedly struck by a blood demon art that immobilizes him with millions of spikes piercing his body. As he begins to absorb the spikes to free himself, Tamo strikes, thrusting her fist into his body. Since he is in the process of absorbing, Muzan inadvertently absorbs Tamo's fist and the substance within it, a drug designed to turn demons back into humans. Muzan is incredulous, unable to believe that such a thing is possible. As he converses with Tamio, it is revealed that she requested to become a demon in order to live long enough to see her children grow into adulthood. However, after transforming, she killed her family and went on to kill many more humans. Filled with remorse, Tamio declares, "I killed scores of them out of despair, and to atone for my sins, I'm going to die right here with you." Her words are a stark contrast to Muzan's relentless pursuit of immortality. As she speaks, Himejima arrives and decapitates Muzan, seemingly ending the threat. In another flashback, it is disclosed that the plan was meticulously orchestrated by Yubayashiki, with only Himejima privy to the details. Yubayashiki knew that the other Hashiras would not accept using their master as bait. Himejima reminisces about meeting Yubayashiki when he was 14 and Himejima was 19, revealing the deep bond and trust between them. It is also unveiled that Yubayashiki possessed the power of foresight, enabling him to predict Muzan's arrival at the mansion. Back in the present, Muzan regenerates his head, signifying that the battle is far from over. The Hashiras realize that they will have to engage in a prolonged and grueling fight with Muzan until sunrise, as Yubayashiki believed that the sun was the only force capable of killing him. The Hashiras, including Tanjiro, arrive to find the mansion in ruins and flames, and without hesitation, they charge at Muzan, prepared for the fierce battle that lies ahead. However, Muzan, in a desperate move, invokes the power of the Infinity Castle. This massive, labyrinthine fortress appears out of nowhere, and its gravitational pull sucks in the Hashiras along with Muzan himself. The sudden shift disorients the warriors as they tumble into this eerie and otherworldly domain. Not only are the Hashiras and Muzan transported into this ominous stronghold, but every last demon slayer is also drawn into its depths. The end. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more upcoming animes. The story kicks off in a medieval world where our main guy, Ryo, wakes up inside an empty cottage. No furniture, no cozy bed, just a table, 2 books, and a lonely knife. But does he read the books or arm himself? Nope. He steps outside for some fresh air instead. Classic protagonist move. Surrounded by towering mountains, Ryo checks his hands and mutters, "Water, come forth," and bam, a little splash of water appears. Magic confirmed. But how did we get here? A few days earlier, Ryo found himself floating in a white, endless void. Before he could panic too much, an angel appears, reads his mind like an open book, and reassures him that he's not in the afterlife yet. The angel, whom Ryo mentally nicknames Michael, cheerfully admits he's been lonely in this realm for years, but also breaks the news that Ryo got flattened by Truck Kun back on Earth. Ouch. Ryo, being genre savvy, immediately realizes he's getting reincarnated. He tells Michael he just wants a slow, peaceful life. Michael says, "Sure, buddy," and reincarnates him in a place called Faya Magical World where only 20% of people can use magic. Lucky for Ryo, he's one of them, and he's best matched with water magic probably because of that chill lifestyle request. Michael drops him into a cottage in the middle of the Rondo Forest. He stocked the place with food and 2 books, one about the world and one about magic. After actually reading the book finally, Ryo learns how to summon water and starts getting the hang of magic. He even figures out that he doesn't need to say spells out loud, just imagine them. And boom, magic happens. Not bad for a beginner. He uses his water magic to fill up the bathtub, only to realize the water's freezing cold. Time to make fire. He tries the good old caveman method and fails miserably. But then, using some high school chemistry, he splits water into hydrogen and oxygen, accidentally freezes it into ice, then uses the ice as a magnifying glass to focus sunlight and start a fire. Fire unlocked. Bath achieved. Clean and relaxed, he realizes he'll soon run out of food. But going outside means monsters, and that tiny knife Michael gave him isn't going to cut it literally. So, he starts working on attack spells. His first attempt, Water Ball, is about as threatening as a water balloon. He tweaks it into Water Jet, but it still can't damage a tree. He switches focus to Ice Magic Stronger, but way harder to control. After days of trial and error, he becomes decent enough to form ice crystals, even if he still can't shoot them like projectiles. With time running out, he sharpens one into a makeshift spearhead and ventures into the forest. While gathering herbs, a lesser boar charges at him. Ryo freezes in fear, pun intended, but just before becoming bacon bait, he snaps out of it, slides away, ices the ground, and skewers the boar with icicles. Victory, sort of. Turns out, lesser boars are the weakest monsters in the forest. Back home, he reads up on more monsters. Dragons? Run. Akuna? Don't even try. Just pray. Still, Ryo's not giving up. The next day, he finds some fruit, and just when things are looking up, an assassin hawk dive bombs him. It uses invisible air magic, and he realizes running is pointless. So he traps it in ice. Thinks it's dead. Surprise? It's not. The hawk escapes with only one eye. Days pass. Ryo trains like crazy fighting weak monsters, fishing, refining his ice powers until he can slice through mountains. But every night, he returns to where he saw a Dullahan, a spooky, headless warrior with smoke pouring from its neck. They spar regularly, and while Ryo keeps losing, he suspects the Dullahan is trying to make him stronger. One day, the Dullahan forges an ice sword and silently offers it to him. Ryo accepts. Teacher vibes achieved. Then, the hawk comes back. Bigger, blacker, and angrier than ever. Yep, it evolved. It blasts through all of Ryo's defenses like paper. In desperation, Ryo grabs the Dullahan's sword and finally defeats the hawk for good. He gives it a moment of respect. realizing it evolved just to fight him. A worthy rival. But the world's not done with surprises. A dragon shows up and talks. Telepathically. Rio's shocked. The dragon's shocked he can use telepathy again. They have a chat, and when Rio shows the ice sword, the dragon instantly recognizes it. It's the sword of the Fairy King. Wait, what? The dragon asks what Rio did to earn such a gift, but Rio has no clue. They part ways, and Rio continues living his not-so-slow life. Meanwhile, Mr. Angel upstairs checks Rio's status screen and realizes he missed something huge. Rio has eternal youth. The last guy didn't have that, so Michael didn't notice. And as Rio enjoys his new powers, a mysterious red-haired boy washes up by the riverbank. Who is he? One day, Rio heads down to the beach. When he gets there, he finds a wrecked ship just chilling on the sand. Curious, he checks it out and spots a guy lying next to it. But then, from the other side of the beach, he hears someone groaning. Turns out, someone did survive. That survivor is Abel, who thought he was going to die at sea after a giant sea monster wrecked his ship during a massive storm. But plot twist, he wakes up in a warm bed, all his stuff neatly placed on a nearby table. He grabs his gear and heads outside, hoping to get his bearings, but all he sees is trees. Right then, Rio strolls out of the house like it's totally normal to be living in the middle of nowhere, half naked in a loincloth. Abel's confused and also mildly concerned about Rio's fashion choices, but before asking anything too rude, he thanks him for saving his life. Rio shrugs it off, saying all he did was carry Abel home. Unfortunately, Abel was the only one left alive. Abel isn't too broken up about it, though they were all illegal smugglers. Rio doesn't totally get what a smuggler is, but whatever time for lunch, Abel's clearly starving. Over their meal, Abel can't hold it in anymore and asks why Rio is dressed like a caveman. Rio calmly explains that he's broke and also isolated. There's literally nowhere nearby to buy clothes even if he had money. Abel's surprised, but honestly impressed. For a guy living in the woods with no resources, Rio's got it pretty together. Abel asks if the meat they're eating was caught with that knife on the table, but Rio says that's just for butchering. He hunts using water magic. To prove it, he casually fills a jug with water. Abel is floored. Where he's from, even in the Central Plains, only half the people can use magic. Rio's surprised too. He was told it was rare. After lunch, Abel says he wants to check something back at the shipwreck. Rio agrees to guide him. On the way, Abel notices Rio doesn't use a magic staff and assumes it's another money issue. Feeling a bit guilty, he offers to handle any monsters they run into as payback for Rio's help. Rio tries to tell him that he can hold his own just fine, but Abel insists. When they get back to the wreck, all the bodies are gone. Rio guesses some monster probably cleaned up the mess. Lucky for Abel that Rio found him first. Abel looks around but doesn't find what he was looking for. When Rio asks what's next, Abel says he needs to regroup with his friends, but they're far north, and he's not even sure how far south he is now. It's going to be a long trip. So he turns to Rio and asks, "Wanna come with me?" Rio is caught off guard but agrees. He's curious about the world beyond the trees anyway. But first, he needs to wrap up a few things, so they agree to leave the next morning. That night, Rio heads out into the forest alone. Abel finds it weird, especially since Rio said there's no one else around, but decides not to pry. Turns out, Rio's meeting Delahan, his forest sparring partner. This might be their last match for a while, so Rio plans to go all out. They duel, and though Delahan is still better, Rio puts up a good fight and even manages to push him back a little. After the match, Delahan gifts Rio a special robe as a farewell present. Rio is genuinely touched. The next morning, the journey begins. But almost immediately, they run into a boar monster. Abel tells Rio to step back, then uses a flashy move called Total Impalement to skewer the beast like a shish kebab. Rio's jaw drops. He's never seen a non-magic move that strong. Abel explains that people who can't use magic fight with combat skills. Later, they reach a marsh full of lizardmen. Abel wants to avoid a fight, but while circling around, Ryo senses the lizards creeping up on them. He warns Abel, who preps for battle, but Ryo decides to take over. With a flick of his hand, he launches a flurry of ice spears and wipes out the lizard squad. Abel is speechless. Afterward, Abel asks how Ryo managed to cast multiple spells at once. Apparently, most mages can only do one at a time. Ryo's confused because he has never had that problem with water magic. Ryo then offers Abel a glass of water, and Abel notices the incantation is different this time. When asked why, Ryo just plays it cool. Truth is, he doesn't need incantations. Eventually, they leave the forest and enter rocky terrain, only to find out they've accidentally wandered into a rock golem hotspot. Rocks start flying, and Ryo is fascinated. These golems look nothing like he expected. Abel tries using total impalement again, but the golem just regenerates. Ryo figures they need a one-shot knockout, so he summons a giant ice cube from the sky and crushes the golems with it. They find a huge magic stone in one of the crushed golems and decide to keep it. Abel mentions that monsters like golems are often found in dungeons. Dungeons? Ryo lights up like a kid at a candy store. Why didn't Abel mention dungeons earlier? Luckily, there's one in Lune, the very town they're headed for. On the way, they chat about dwarves and elves. Dwarves are short, strong, and love crafting. There are a bunch in Lune. Elves, on the other hand, mostly stay in forests and avoid people. Abel only knows one in Lune. Suddenly, Ryo senses something terrifying. A giant griffin appears. Yeah, they're in trouble. Thinking fast, Ryo tosses out some meat. Abel follows suit. The griffin snatches up the snacks and flies away, apparently satisfied. Abel says griffins haven't been seen near human lands in centuries, so if they're showing up here, that mountain is probably holding back all kinds of nightmare fuel. And sure enough, their next encounter is a flock of wyverns. Abel wants to detour, but Ryo's had enough. He jumps out and slams the wyverns with icicle spears like he's playing Whack-A-Dragon. Abel is amazed. Normally, it takes 20 adventurers to take down even one wyvern. After hacking their way through more beasts, they finally reach the other side of the mountain. Ryo and Abel are back on the road, arguing like an old married couple over whether fighting wyverns was a good idea. Ryo? Totally cool with it. Abel? Never wants to see another flying lizard again. Still, he's glad Ryo did it, since they now have a whole bag of shiny magic stones worth a fortune. Eventually, they head far north and spot a narrow road up ahead. Classic clue that a town's nearby. Abel, seeing that the road leads straight to something that looks like Mount Everest, votes to go west instead. He seems to recognize the snowy mountains but keeps it to himself. All he tells Ryo is that following the path east leads to a town called Kayati. Ryo's hyped he's dying to sleep in an actual bed. Abel's surprised that Ryo, the monster fighting caveman, enjoys soft pillows and hot food. Abel starts telling him about Kayati's local food, saying its chef's kiss amazing. When they arrive, they hit up a restaurant. While Ryo stuffs his face with curry and rice, Abel explains how adventurer guilds work. Register, get an ID, trade loot, and gain access across the country. Ryo's intrigued, especially when he hears that being an alchemist helps, and since he's a chemistry nerd, he's already sold. While eating, he's also stunned that this fantasy world has curry. He whispers to himself that in most Isekai anime, the hero has to invent modern food from scratch. Here, it's already on the menu. Blessed. Ryo becomes a total curry mukbanger, ordering seconds, thirds. You get the picture. The next morning, he's still gushing about it, making Abel wonder if this guy ever ate real food before. When Ryo jokes that Abel might be hiding more delicious secrets, Abel reacts a little too weirdly suspicious. On the way to their next town, Lon, they stroll through peaceful farmlands. At the gate, the guard is shocked to see Abel alive. News had spread that he was missing. Abel has no time to explain and just says Rio saved him. The guard shakes Rio's hand like he's a national hero. Since Rio's not registered, Abel pays his entry fee again. As they walk in, Rio realizes Abel is kind of a big deal around here. They head straight to the Adventurers Guild. Abel explains the ranking system, saying Rio can probably skip F rank thanks to his endorsement. He might even start at D rank. Abel also warns that dumping all their magic stones at once could crash the economy, so they'll talk to the guildmaster first. The moment they enter the guild, it's like a celebrity just walked in. Everyone is ecstatic that Abel's alive. Rio, not wanting to get in the way of the Abel fan club, steps outside for a walk. That's when an elf girl spots him and notices his clothes, calling them the Fairy King's outfit. Rio's like, "Fairy, what now?" But she's in a rush and leaves, promising they'll meet again. Abel finds him and pulls him back inside, publicly introducing Rio as the hero who saved his life. After the crowd settles down, they go to the receptionist. Abel pulls rank and asks her to register Rio as a D rank adventurer. She's stunned. No one from Abel's elite Crimson Sword party has ever done this before. She agrees, but says Rio still needs to do a physical assessment. Meanwhile, Abel wants to meet the guildmaster, Hugh, the loud and excitable guildmaster, who crashes into the room thrilled to see Abel alive. Abel asks if surviving that mountain death trap is enough proof of Rio's skills. Hugh agrees and says they'll bump Rio's rank. Before they can finish, Abel's old teammates Lynn, Warren, and Ria barge in. Lynn drops to her knees in shock, crying tears of disbelief. Abel tells them how Rio saved his life, and Hugh gives the group privacy while asking Nena, the clerk, to handle Rio's paperwork. After some Q&A with Nena skills, level, dungeons, etc., Rio signs up for a dungeon class, learns there's a clock in the city WoW, and finds out he can stay in the guild lodge for 300 days. He registers, prints his adventure card, and heads out. Hugh tells Abel how chaotic things were while he was gone. Meanwhile, Abel takes Rio to sell their magic stones and buy him some new clothes and a staff. Rio appreciates it, but questions the staff. He prefers his tiny sword. Abel thinks it's more of a butter knife, but Rio insists it's fine. They chat some more, and Rio learns the days, weeks, and months in this world are just like Earth's. With all the Earth-like things around, especially the curry, Rio starts suspecting another Earthling may have reincarnated and left their mark on this world. Later that day, Abel drags Rio to his welcome party. They drink, laugh, and party like there's no tomorrow. The next morning, Rio is hungover and gets escorted back to the lodge by Nana, who teases him about Abel's brother, Ra, clinging to him all night out of gratitude. At the lodge, Na introduces Rio to his new roommates Niels and Ito. Niels instantly starts simping over Na, while Ito rolls his eyes and greets Rio instead. They all agree to keep things chill between them. Then Na brings in one more roommate, Ian, a 16-year-old who lost her parents and now wants to become an adventurer. Rio's now got a full adventuring squad in his dorm. Meanwhile, Abel tells his team just how insane Rio's magic is. Ice magic. No staff, wyvern slaying. Lynn is in denial. That kind of magic, she says, defies all logic. Ria mentions a legend, the Inferno Magician. But that's just a fairy tale, right? They worry about Rio's power and wonder if he might join the Empire. Abel reassures them that's not happening. Rio hates the Duhai Empire with a passion. Back at the lodge, Rio laughs and jokes with his new roommates, quietly amazed at how crazy his life has become. The next day, the teacher wraps up the intro course after 5 intense days of dungeon training. Now it's time for the real deal, their first trip into an actual labyrinth. Ammon's nervous, but Rio tells him to relax or he'll burn out before they even begin. Before heading out, the teacher answers a clever question from Rio about jumping straight to already cleared levels. Turns out, that's a thing, just not here. Loun's Cavern doesn't allow shortcuts, and even then, it's mostly a southern region rumor. As they approach the dungeon, the teacher drops a fun fact. The entire city was built around this giant labyrinth. Every few years, monsters inside multiply like crazy in an event called the Roar of the Depth. Sometimes, they even crawl out into the city, hence the double walls. At the entrance, they skip the usual registration perks of being students, and the tutor tells them the first floor is pretty tame. They can roam freely, but shouldn't stray too far. Exploring the caves, Ryo suddenly senses danger. He freezes the threat with ice magic so Amon can strike. Turns out it's a soldier ant way too tough for a first-floor enemy. Still, Ryo's frost lances and Amon's sword skills get the job done. They even harvest a magic stone because, hey, adventuring has bills too. Later at the dorm, their roommates cheer their first dungeon run. Niels grumbles about the drink not being alcohol, and Ido reminds him it's dorm rules. They're all surprised the duo beat a soldier ant, but Ryo calls it teamwork. Planning their next dive, Ryo offers to go as deep as the third layer with Amon, who's thrilled. But Ryo admits that Soldier Ant was out of place, it shouldn't be on the first floor. Niels agrees. Then Bam Abel, leader of the Scarlet Sword, walks in like a celebrity. Everyone fanboys for a second. Abel gives them some sage advice. A real adventurer's best weapon is survival. When his teammates drag him off to report to the guild master, his comrade Lin gives Ryo a long, unreadable look. Later, she admits to being curious Ryo might just be the real deal. The next day, Ryo and Amon hit Layer 3. Ryo snipes with ice magic while Amon tanks with his sword. After the battle, they rest, and Ryo notes that Amon's swordplay reminds him of Abel. Turns out Amon trained under an old man named Kira, who studied the elite hewn style. Ryo shares that he had a mentor too, though his sword style is, let's say, custom. Ryo advises Amon to build stamina. His style is safe but tiring, and Ryo recalls how Abel trained like a man possessed every morning. Inspired, Amon promises to do the same. The next morning, Ryo skips the dungeon and heads to the library because magic is cool, but knowledge is power. He's wowed by the alchemy section and dives into both theory and recipe books. Just as he's settling in, the sky darkens a solar eclipse. Then, chaos. A horned woman crashes the piece with a fire blast. Ryo quickly throws up ice shields, barely blocking it. She's not your average baddie, probably on the same level as a behemoth or griffin. She launches fire, wind, and blade attacks, and Ryo counters with icy precision. It's an epic dual magic versus raw power. She's fast boosted by wind magic and Ryo's forced to defend, but his Fairy King's gear keeps him in the game. Eventually, he lands a hit, but she regenerates instantly. Just as the tide turns against him, it starts raining. Acid rain. That gives Ryo an opening, but before he can finish the fight, the eclipse ends and the demon vanishes. Before leaving, she gives her name Leonor Oraka Albuquerque dramatic much. Still shaken, Ryo remembers he came to buy books. After grabbing cash thanks to those wyvern stones, he returns to find his dorm empty and his friends cornered by bullies from room 15. Ryo doesn't hesitate. 4 guys go down with a splash spell. The last one, Dan, gets knocked out cold with a punch to the gut. Back at the dorm, Ryo gets patched up by Ido. Turns out the wind spear from the demon nearly hit his heart. When asked what happened, Ryo just says, "Another time." Deep in thought, he realizes there's a lot more to this world than dungeons and demons.